For the following research, my classmates and I came up with the topic of research on gender roles in our society. Each of us were to come up with our own hypotheses on what we thought would show significant data about gender roles. The hypotheses I chose for the research are shown above on the slide. Initially, I expected to find that males would agree with stereotypes relating to males and females would disagree with stereotypes relating to females. But I found that not only were my hypotheses correct, the results also showed that both males and females disagreed with both male and female stereotypes.
Hi, my name is Taylor Flowers, and I decided to see if gender and age made an impact on how people view the traditional household idea. My hypothesis number 1 is men are more likely to believe a traditional household is better. My hypothesis number 2 is women ages 18 through 25 believe it is better to have a dual-income household than older women. My hypothesis number 3 is men feel greater pressure to provide for their family than women. By using crosstabs on the data from our class survey, I was able to test my hypothesis. With my first hypothesis, men are more likely to believe a traditional household is better, I proved that although many men did agree that a traditional household was better, more disagreed with my hypothesis. With my second hypothesis, women ages 18 through 25 believed it is better to have a dual-income household than older women, I was able to prove that age was not a factor when it came to having a dual-income household. With my third hypothesis, men feel greater pressure to provide for their family than women, I was able to prove that compared to females, men did feel more pressure growing up to provide for their family.
Hello, my name is Sophia Salcedo Flores, and for this class survey on gender roles, I came up with the hypothesis of men are more likely to hold on to traditional values more than women, and fathers tend to hold traditional values more towards their daughters than towards sons. For my first hypothesis, my results came out that men agreed and strongly agreed to the belief that a traditional family, while a higher percentage of women disagreed, or strongly disagreed. When it came to holding traditional values towards daughters, men scored a higher percentage when agreeing, and women scored a higher percentage when disagreeing. When men were asked to hold, if they hold traditional values with their sons, more men agreed than women, but the percentages of daughters were higher than the percentage of sons.
Hello, my name's Whitney Lopez, and my research was on gender and the possible effects on spending, with the hypothesis that gender predicts the control of spending within the household, and the null hypothesis would be gender has no relation to the control of spending within the household. The following chart shows the financial decisions within a household, and I looked at the married men and married women. And it showed that 7 out of 9 of the married men sometimes made the financial decisions in the household, whereas women, 26 of 34 married women, always or sometimes made the financial decisions in the household. And the male Kramer's V showed a 0.452, and which is a pretty strong interpretation for the data, and the female Kramer's V had a 0.319, which is a moderate interpretation regarding these results, and both of them did show a value under 0.05, and that would verify the significance of that. So they were also significant. And therefore, this would mean that gender does seem to predict the spending for the household, where women tend to spend more of the household income and make more of the buying decisions than men. Therefore, women, if they'd like to see a difference in the gender gap reduced or possibly eliminated, they can support companies and businesses that promote women and have more women in high-level executive positions. This could encourage more businesses to promote qualified women in corporate America by supporting these businesses.
My name is Jessica Pena, and I focused on 3 hypotheses. My first hypothesis was gender predicts if you feel uncomfortable when you see a man acting like a woman. My results were there was no level of significance, and we cannot reject the null hypothesis. My second hypothesis is gender predicts that you can spot a gay man by his dress and/or demeanor. My results are there is significance, and we can reject the null hypothesis. My third hypothesis is gender predicts that if you see a man who does not fit into stereotypical male roles, you consider him to be gay. The results were there is no level of significance, and we cannot reject the null hypothesis. In terms of my data, 1 out of 3 hypotheses are significant. In light of what I was attempting to test, I can conclude that there is a relationship that gender predicts that you can spot a gay man by his dress and/or demeanor.
The topic that I decided to take on in this survey was rape myth acceptance and rape victim desirability. My hypothesis 1 and 2 resulted in values that were non-significant. My p-value for hypothesis 1 was 0.302, it's greater than 0.05, and the p-value for hypothesis 2 was 0.322, also greater than 0.05. For my hypothesis 3, however, my significance value was 0.028, which is indicative of a slightly moderately high significance. So who cares? I mean, what does it matter that these hypotheses 1 and 2 are non-significant and that hypothesis 3 is significant? Well, if the results of hypothesis 1 and 2 are sound, this may be indicative of a changing rape myth attitude among men in our society, which, currently existing research reveals men as being more accepting of rape myth attitudes than women. If results for hypothesis 3 are sound, it may give insight into some important and overlooked aspects about rape and rape victims. Topics on psychological effects and impact on rape victims are currently not at the forefront of anti-rape arguments and campaigns, and these results may give a little more incentive to bring those topics to the forefront.
For my portion of the study, I was looking at differences by gender, age, and income, and its effect upon gender traditionalism, and specifically my hypotheses were constructed around respondents' views of masculinity. From our survey questions, I constructed an interval ratio level scale in which all items indicating a respondent's level of agreement for a particular statement regarding gender traditionalism attitudes, specifically looking at masculinity, were included. From there, I recoded into an ordinal variable so that I would be able to draw meaningful conclusions from the numbers. I used crosstabs to analyze the data, Kramer's V as my measure of association, and chi-squared as a test of significance for all of my hypotheses. My hypotheses regarding attitudes towards masculinity by age and income were not supported. They both followed the same pattern in which a majority of respondents, regardless of age or level of income, fell into the moderate traditional category, which is indicated by the middle orange bar. My first hypothesis regarding differences in attitudes towards masculinity by gender was supported. Men, as indicated by the red bar, were more likely to report having more traditional views regarding performance of masculinity than women. This finding is statistically significant and of weak association.
My name is Sophia Pedrosa, and for my part of the project, I decided to look at how our understanding of media affects an understanding of gender expression. Basically, what do you think makes a person male or female, and how do they express that?
So let's take a look at some specifics. We have 4 hypotheses that I was specifically working on. 3 of them had to do with media literacy. The first, that media literacy will correlate positively with a critical approach to gender stereotypes in the media, meaning that the more you're aware of media's influence on us as a society, the more you are aware of the gender stereotypes and the more critical you are. So I looked at how participants express their preferences for perhaps a traditional household versus a dual-income household, or perhaps even a household where a maternal figure is the primary breadwinner. Secondly, media literacy will correlate positively with higher levels of body image positivity. and I examined how participants scored their body, their perception of their attractiveness, what they wish they looked like, and rated them on a 1 to 10 scale, 10 being the most self-confident in one's body image. Third, media literacy will correlate positively with the acceptance of non-traditional performance of masculinity, meaning that the more you're aware of media's influences, the more you are aware that it is okay not to express yourself in stereotypical ways as masculine and feminine. Fourthly, men will, or we hypothesize that men would be more likely to reject or be hesitant to accept these non-traditional performances of masculinity. So for both these hypotheses, we provided various pictures and had participants rank them or categorize them based on their masculinity or perceived lack thereof. So what happened from this? Our one statistically significant result was that men are more likely to hold traditional beliefs about gender expression. They were more hesitant to rank less traditional expressions of masculinity as manly than women were. And this was the only hypothesis of my portion of the project that was applicable to the general population. I believe that if we had had a larger sample size, or perhaps a more representative sample size, that we would have been able to make more discernments about what is applicable to the general population. But for now, I think this is a step forward in that we're recognizing that there are gender discrepancies in how we accept people.